10 seconds, we'll tell you about the impact we've made for the last 10 years thanks to all of you. Starting now. In 10 years, we've enabled 200,000 citizens to take concrete actions on issues they care about, accelerated the projects of 8,000 entrepreneurs and startups, and helped 10,000 employees and organizations become more involved in social impact. Done. Let's talk about now.
The reality is not enough. Our natural resources are still disappearing and inequalities are growing, and climate emergencies continue to hit us harder every year. What we are facing is a complex systemic issue that cannot be solved by independent action. Radical change requires radical collaboration, and it's time for us to act together like never before. And here is how.
Imagine if every single Filipino was re-empowered to participate in change-making. If volunteering was accessible and we all had the resources to make informed decisions for the common good. This is the power of 10 in action. If every active citizen can influence 10 other citizens, who will then influence 10 other citizens, then we'll see a massive wave of positive change that we believe can turn the tide for good. Through mentorship, paid volunteering opportunities, and freely sharing our knowledge on development and innovation, we can open a path that every Filipino can access.
Imagine if all players realized our interconnectedness and realized that no one is truly safe until everyone is. We'd be able to build real, sustainable solutions to get us through systemic shocks. At Make Sense, we're dedicated to building an open learning platform, offering learning experiences on social innovation and collective problem-solving activities that are accessible and contextualized to our current reality. By building a strong baseline understanding of how social impact happens, we'll equip citizens with the capacity to act.
Imagine if each day you got 10 friends to plant trees, and each of those friends got another 10 friends to plant trees. In a week, you would have planted a forest. And that is the power of massive mobilization. How one action, reproduced by a collective, can create a strong enough wave to change the tide. Our ambition is to amplify impact through radical collaboration with players across the board. NGOs, private and public companies, entrepreneurs, and everyday citizens. We've already started with the Health for All Coalition, a collaboration of healthcare specialists, community leaders, and engaged citizens designing better healthcare for Filipinos. This year, the coalition will launch a campaign and a pilot program to empower youth leaders and young doctors in engaging local communities for better health.
Imagine if the youth were given the tools and the platform to be storytellers of their own communities. If we could amplify each other's voices and support budding artists and cultural leaders all over the country, we could spark the imagination and together craft what a better Philippines could look like.
This is Make Sense Studio, a platform to re-empower young Filipinos to be effective storytellers who can inform, inspire, and change the status quo. When we change the story, we change the world.
As we draw closer to achieving a larger set of goals by 2030, that is the SDGs, we are committed to working 10 times as much as we did a decade ago, with you, in spirit of radical collaboration. The world is changing in an exponential way. We must re-empower 10 times, mobilize 10 times bigger, and make sense of our actions in a bigger, bolder way. Let's make sense 10 times. Join the movement at philippines.makesense.org.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Giginhawa Imagining Healthier Futures. I'm Pepper, and I'm going to be your host for tonight. We'd really like to thank all of you for joining us on this lovely Saturday night, and we really hope that you can all take this as a pit stop before getting back to the everyday daily grind that we're going through. So sit back, relax, and be inspired tonight. Also, if you're already here, well, welcome, and we hope you can invite your friends to also join us. So do tag your friends in the chat box. You know, there might be someone you know who's also in need of a breather, in need of some remotivation. So don't hesitate to tag them in the chat box and also invite them to join you here tonight in this event. All right. we're going to have plenty of amazing stories to share this night, a lot of different insights, and definitely a lot of inspiration to go around. So really share it with your friends. If you want to click that share button and put it in your wall as well, this would be really awesome. Do share the motivation. And well, since tonight's also all about refreshing and reigniting, well, I'm wondering, how's everyone feeling tonight? If you can just type one word in the chat box in our live to describe how you're feeling or how you are this Saturday night, I'd be really happy to read them. So I'm going to pause for a bit and wait for some answers. I really want to know how everyone is doing tonight. Awesome. I'm seeing a couple of answers already. We have refreshed. Someone said chill. It's a chill Saturday night. That's awesome. Good for you. Some people are also saying hi from the city they're tuned in. That's awesome. Welcome, welcome. Again, share it to your friends, share it on your wall. Just keep sharing. Tag your friends in the chat box as well. The question I just asked is, how are you feeling in one word this Saturday night? It's a cold night. Some people are saying they're feeling a little bit cold. We have some people who also said they're feeling energetic and excited. We all are too. Awesome. Okay, well, keep them coming. Keep those answers coming. Keep tagging your friends as well to join us. And thanks for sharing how you're feeling tonight. It's really, really great to see people who are, feeling excited, feeling energized, feeling chill, a little bit cold maybe. But even if you're feeling tired or sleepy, it's fine. Thank you so much still for taking that extra step to join us on this event tonight. And hopefully by the end of this stream, you can leave the event, the gathering, feeling a little bit more refreshed and a little bit more re-inspired as well. Thank you so much. So many people are staying excited. That's awesome. All right. Now, don't forget, if you want to ask any questions tonight, if you want to share reactions or you want to share some memorable lines that really stuck with you, you can share it online by using the hashtag Giginhawa and hashtag Imagining Healthy Futures, either on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Just keep on sharing. Again, the hashtags for tonight are hashtag Giginhawa and hashtag Imagining Healthy Futures as well. Okay, to not keep you waiting and to start us off officially, let's welcome Danielle Molina, the Community Manager of the Health for All Coalition, to tell us a little bit more about why we're gathered here tonight. Danny, take it away.
Thank you so much, Pepper. Hello, everyone. I'm Danny from Make Sense, and I'm the Community Manager of the Health for All Coalition, and also currently head our youth initiative, Imagining Healthy Futures. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. An event focused on both rest and advocacy seems to be an odd mix. We're used to advocacy work always being tied to what we can do, who we can talk to, the things we can provide. But let me share with you tonight why we're gathered. In the Philippines, we've been under the world's longest lockdown for 545 days and counting. A year and a half into the pandemic, we've seen the case numbers ebb and flow. We've waited for vaccines to be created, approved, and rolled out, and yet a full recovery of the nation seems to be as elusive as ever. For the past 2 weeks, we've been hearing the words all-time high almost every single day as the biggest COVID surge ever ravages the country 545 days in. I don't think any of us really need much more of a reminder of how dark these times have been for all of us. It's been at the front of our minds for more than a year now. Each and every one of us probably already has an image etched into our minds that sums up the state we've been in since the pandemic started. For me, this image is of cars lined up along an emergency room driveway, an oxygen tank anchoring each car to the side of the road while they wait for a slot in the hospital. All of them just holding on to the hope of getting another chance to breathe. Tonight, while it might not seem so apparent, We're gathered here with our own metaphorical oxygen tanks. After a year and a half of waiting, of trying to do our own little part again and again every single day, of anger and of tears, we're all here panting and gasping. But we're also here trying to refill our stores and holding out some hope for some room to breathe. So to start us off tonight, let's take a minute to do just literally that. Let's all breathe together. I'd like us to do a quick mindfulness exercise together, and don't worry if it doesn't feel natural at first or you feel kind of silly doing it. Just take this time to breathe and give yourself some space. Relax in whatever seat you're in right now, and just take a moment to feel the floor beneath your feet. Just stretch out your arms, just relax, and find a good position to sit in. Let's take a few deep breaths together. So let's take a deep breath in and out. And let's do that a few more times, just the way that you feel good doing it. I'm glad we could all take a few deep breaths together and hopefully allow ourselves some headspace to be more present here tonight. I say allow ourselves deliberately because there seems to be a prevailing concept that trying to take a step back from the crisis we're in right now is some sort of a sin. And while we can't turn our backs on the pandemic and the injustices that worsen it, we should be comforted and in a way challenged by the age-old saying that you can't pour from an empty cup. That's why we're all here tonight. We are all still our best selves. We are still just as much of advocates as we were before. We are still capable of so much good. The pandemic didn't take away the good inside of us. So as difficult and counterintuitive as it seems, we all need to pause and allow ourselves to be grounded again, to rediscover that good. We all have to take time to find that goodness, that joy of empowering and uplifting others. And only then can we start thinking of sharing it with others once more. Giginhawa, imagining healthier futures. You might start to see where we're going with this one right now. In Tagalog, ginhawa has taken on a more metaphorical meaning of ease, relief, well-being. But where I'm from, in Hiligaynon, ginhawa really literally means to breathe. It speaks volumes to me of how these two words are exactly the things we've been craving for a year and a half now. An aggressive respiratory virus plaguing us in what seems to be unprecedented times in modern history leaves many literally gasping in need for air, while all in all, everyone is yearning for some ease and relief, a sense of well-being and normalcy at the end of this crisis. Tonight, simply put, those two meanings together give you Giginhawa, imagining healthier futures. Literal room to breathe, to check out momentarily from the collective burnout and fatigue, and to let ourselves imagine and believe in a healthier future again. Giginhawa is a promise, an ever-present mantra that we will all get to breathe again. The Health for All Coalition was founded on this hope. Through the meaningful collaboration of health experts and citizens, we join together and find ways to one day have healthcare that's no longer panting or out of breath, but one that breathes, lives, and thrives, starting with every household and community up into hospitals, governance, and policy. Health is humanly intrinsic, completely universal. It's perhaps the most basic thing that ties us all together. Everyone has bodies to take care of, loved ones that they don't want getting sick, concerns of getting food on the table, and yet it's not every day that everyone has a seat at the table to talk about health. Since last year, the coalition has been that open table, gathering together different organizations, health providers, medical associations, health industry leaders, and representatives of vulnerable groups in order to identify the gaps in the healthcare system and find ways that we might be able to be part of the solution. Health for all. It's as literal as the name suggests. All means you included. Your voice, your backgrounds, your solutions are valuable. So if you share this hope with us of health for all, built together by all, then we invite you to take a seat at the table. You can join the Health for All Coalition as we build on that hope together. One way that the coalition has been working on turning this hope into a reality is through imagining healthy futures. In the midst of crisis, the Health for All Coalition found the youth to be crucial in bridging the gaps and offering some breathing room, both to communities devastated by the effects of the pandemic, as well as the overwhelmed healthcare system. And thus, Imagining Healthy Futures was born, bringing together young leaders from all over the country, each with their own unique concern, perspective, and solution. Together with the experts from the Health for All Coalition, we help these young leaders mold their ideas into something that's aligned with the true needs of their community, as well as one that would be more long-term. In Imagining Healthy Futures, we don't just dive into the solutions head first. Rather, we let each team dig deeper into the problem, speak to their communities, and bring more often unheard voices to have a seat at the table. Through this, we hope to bring these communities the ginhawa that they truly need. Just 2 months after kicking off in July, 12 teams spanning 10 regions have started creating meaningful change in their communities. And it's my privilege to be sharing those initiatives with you tonight. If any of the teams are here, kindly let us know in the chat so our audience tonight can show you some love. Imagining healthier choices in sexual and reproductive health, we have Tulong Tulong PH from Region 4A and Agak from Siquijor. Imagining safe spaces for conversations on mental health, we have the mental health advocates from Abra and Girls' Generation Gap from Pasig. Imagining healthier families through nutrition and preventative health, we have Praxis from Region 4A, Oplan Nutri Team from Bacolod City, Kaulayaw from the National Capital Region, and Libsog Kabataan from Tacloban. And imagining a COVID-free Philippines through vaccination, we have Paayota from Gensan, Sandalan ng Bayan from Sorsogon, and Tabang Sikad from Cagayan de Oro. Can we all give these inspiring youth leaders some love in the chat? Their journey so far has not just been one filled with brilliant ideas and solutions. Rather, it's been one filled with bravery and humility. They've had to shed things that they thought they knew to truly listen to their communities and co-build solutions with them. At the end of the day, this is the twofold hope of imagining healthy futures. The healthy future we're imagining is one where every community is empowered and equipped to make the best health choices and having the means to exercise them. But it's also imagining a future of these young leaders becoming doctors, nurses, allied health practitioners, researchers, and even decision makers who have the most underserved at heart. So in summary, why are we gathered here tonight? Well, simply put, tayo ay giginhawa rin. While I agree that may be something that we can't see happening just yet after the stream ends, I hope we can at least feel that we can believe in that promise again. Tayo ay giginhawa rin. You can say that with me if you can. Tayo ay giginhawa rin. So let's take a moment tonight to pause, catch our breath, so that after this, we can be instruments to letting others do the same. So to be our guides on that journey tonight, I'm privileged to introduce to you the inspiring people joining our panel. we have Chloe Abrasada, a third-year occupational therapy student in UP Manila with an interest in design and marketing. She advocates for mental health and environmental sustainability and has been at this work ever since 2018. She is passionate about bridging gaps through creation, education, and community mobilization. And recently, she's been a volunteer under Imagining Health Futures and worked with her team to create Paayuta, an online vaccine database consolidating information on vaccines in General Santos City. She's also a firm believer in the importance of self-care, self-awareness, and well-being. Joining her on the panel, we also have Charlotte Marasigan, a researcher with a passion for uplifting communities and empowering youth leaders. Initially involved in clinical research, she was able to take root in community work as the former Community Partnerships Manager for CareGo, an idea stage startup. Charlotte is also the Development Division Head Officer of the Committee on Research and Development of ULEAD Initiative. As a member of the Health for All Coalition, she's also been a mentor in Imagining Healthy Futures, sharing her knowledge and joy of service with other leaders. Next, we have Ren Capacio. They're a public health student passionate about providing people with opportunities to make quality health decisions for themselves and their families. Through Imagining Healthy Futures, Ren was able to band together their high school friends to work on a community nutrition initiative in Tacloban. Ren has lofty hopes for the future and their community as they work together to strengthen systems within the local government to be a more healthy environment going forward. And last but not the least, we have Dr. Lorenzo Sablay, who recently completed his postgraduate internship at the Makati Medical Center. Immersed in volunteering since 2010, Dr. Lorenzo has been a consistent advocate for health, the environment, and empowering marginalized and underprivileged youth. During the early months of the pandemic, he was inspired to initiate and take part in local and national movements and is currently the country lead of the youth-led and youth-targeted organization More Viral Than the Virus Philippines and the assistant head of the socio-civic medical student organization, the Luzon Crisis Assistant Team. He also volunteers his time with the Department of Health Hotline and recently volunteered as well for the Philippine Red Cross community vaccination efforts, continuing to be an advocate for people, planet, peace, and prosperity. Along with our panel tonight, I'd like to welcome back our host and moderator, Pepper, to start tonight's conversation. Thank you.
And thank you, Danny, for a wonderful opening message. There's nothing left for me to say, but there's a lot of different things you pointed out that I'm sure people resonated with or do agree with. So for our audience members, again, feel free to really use the chat box to echo, to rebound, to maybe even further comment. We'd really love to hear your thoughts. And again, this gathering involves all of you, so you're very much welcome to comment in the chat box. Now, to welcome again our wonderful panel for tonight. Hello to Charlotte or Cha. Doc Lorenzo is here with us as well, of course, as well as Ren and Chloe. Hello, everybody. It's great seeing you all this evening. Hello. Awesome. Can we all...
Thank you. Hi.
Thank you so much. Hi. Hi, Chloe. For our audience members... Yeah, hi, Cha. Can we all give a few hearts in the chat, heart reacts in the chat box for tonight's panel, please? We'll wait for those heart reacts in lieu of the round of applause. Thank you. Okay, awesome. So many heart reacts for a really great panel for tonight. Maybe we can start off with just a really quick round of introductions. I know you've all been introduced, but I'm sure you still want to say hi. So we can do like a really quick run through of just saying hi, introductions, anything that hasn't been said yet, so the audience could get to know you a little bit better. And maybe we could start off with Chat for tonight. Chat, take the mic.
Okay, so hi everyone. Thank you for having me here as one of your panel. I'm Charlotte Marasigan. I'm the Development Division Head Officer of ULEAD Initiative. So I hope you learn from me today. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Chat. I'm very sure that a lot of people are going to be learning from you tonight. And we have next up, if you could also unmute and say hi, Doc Lorenzo. Hello.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon to our attendees and viewers. Thank you, Make Sense Philippines, for this opportunity. I am Lorenzo Sablay, a Doctor of Medicine graduate from the University of Santo Tomas, Faculty of Medicine and Surgery, and recently I completed my postgraduate internship training from the Makati Medical Center. And as said a while ago, I'm an alumnus of AMSA Philippines, by the way, and currently I am the country lead of youth-led and youth-targeted organization, More Viral Than the Virus Philippines, and the Chief Regional Executive for Asia Pacific for More Viral Than the Virus Global. I also serve as team lead for the Maria Movement, global coordination team member for the UNFCCC Yongo Youth Constituency, the program coordinator for Ocean's Voice Working Group, an ambassador for the UNDP Movers Program and Travel for Change Adventures, and a volunteer for the DOH COVID-19 hotline. It's an honor to be here and to be with my other panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lorenzo. It's an honor to have you tonight. Thanks so much for being here. Next up, we have, hi there, Ren. You want to introduce yourself too?
Hello, everyone. Good evening. I'm super happy to be here. My name is Ren. I'm a third year BS Public Health student from UP Manila and the team lead of Libsug Kabataan. Our organization aims to address and provide solutions to the problems of nutrition in the community, more specifically among children. Thank you po.
And we're very happy to have you as well here tonight, Ren. All right, last but definitely not the least, hi there, Chloe. You want to say hi as well?
Hi. I'm Chloe, and just like everyone else, I'm really thankful to be here. I'm a third year BS Occupational Therapy student in UP Manila, and outside school, I love volunteering and doing a lot of different advocacy work. So one of my latest endeavors, I guess, was with Make Sense Imagining Healthy Futures, wherein I worked with my team, Paayota, in creating our project Jensen Bakuna, which basically tries to target vaccine accessibility in our city specifically. So yeah, thanks for having me here.
And thanks for being here, Chloe. Very happy as well to have you on board tonight. All right, thanks so much to our panel for introducing themselves. I'm sure everybody is super excited to hear from all of you. But before that, again, to our audience members right now who are tuning in, do invite your friends. And just as a reminder, if you have any questions for our speakers, or if you feel like, again, anything they say is resonating with you or something that you want to share about, feel free to let us know in the chat box or through social media, any platform really. Again, the hashtags for tonight are hashtag Giginhawa Rin. I'm sure it's in the chat box already. And also the second hashtag is hashtag Imagining Healthy Futures. Don't forget to use those hashtags for tonight in any post, and especially in the chat box. All right, now to begin the discussion, maybe we can start off with something very close to your heart, something that is, we want to talk about what really motivates you as leaders, as youth champions, as people in the health sector as well. So really the first question we do want to ask everybody, the panel tonight, is what was it that made you feel like you needed to do something for your community? What was, were there any stories specifically from your community that stood out to you? We'd really love to hear them. And what was sort of that last straw that made you say, no, I can't sit down, I can't keep watching this anymore, I need to take action? And we have a couple minutes, just around 2, to do a round of answers because we really love to hear from all of our panelists. So again, what was something that made you feel like it really pushed you to do something for your community or for the community you're part of? And for this question, maybe we can start off with Dr. Lorenzo.
Yeah, thank you very much for the first question. And looking back in the early months of the COVID-19 pandemic, I was nearing the end of my medical studies. I was in like the last 2 months or so, and I was studying and preparing for my final oral exam, as you do in UST. This is the one last challenge in obtaining my medical degree. And during this time, the Philippine communities were sadly put in lockdown, and the youth, either you're working or in school, were made to stay at home. During this time, I have encountered news and complaints from young students and professionals, feeling tired, they're left out, They're burned out from being told to stay at home, from not being listened to, from not receiving empathy. I've also heard stories of young Filipinos, even close to my community and my own home, whose mental health have been negatively affected. I've also encountered many stories and sharings of people suffering and being victims of false information about COVID 19 and other important aspects of their health. I have read accounts of those afflicted by COVID 19, and some of them are even close friends and family who cannot and do not have the capacity to receive care and intervention, even from the most basic care to the advanced, critical, and life saving interventions. I have repeatedly read and listened to actual stories of frontliners whose very rights, security, and welfare were not being considered. I've also been alarmed by the plight of families, local communities whose daily needs were not being met by the assistance provided and whose daily sustenance is hanging by a thread, worsened by the uncertainty of COVID 19 response and the devastating calamities that plague them later on. For me, there was really no last straw, sadly, but it felt like a bunch of dynamite and grenades being piled up one by one, exploding until there was nothing left. So there was nothing left from my patience and not understanding. From this, I asked myself, what will happen to them, to us, to me? Paano na yung health, welfare, growth, and empowerment natin, lalo na yung mga kabataang Pilipino? Hanggang dito na lang ba tayo dahil sa pandemya? So I now arrived at a crossroads in my life. Do I simply ignore the issues and problems that I'm repeatedly encountering, seeing and hearing, and just focus completely on my studies? Or do I step up, initiate something meaningful and impactful, and do something to be able to help? So this was also the time when I thought of the Filipino culture of bayanihan, our sense of community and thoughtfulness, that even in the darkest times, we choose to help and we give ourselves, we give our time, our skills, and our efforts to help in our own capacities, and sometimes even beyond what we can actually provide. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Dr. Enzo. I really resonate a lot with the question you asked yourself na hanggang dito na lang ba tayo? And I think, you mentioned there was no really last straw, but a bunch of different things that really pushed you to say and to ask this very relevant question. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. And as someone who has heard these stories firsthand from people you work with and obviously in the field you're in, it's so valuable to hear this. Thanks so much. I'm sure the rest of the panel also resonate with this. So maybe we can also hear from Chloe next on the answer to the question, what made you feel like or what pushed you to do something for your community?
Sure. Thank you. So, for me, we all know how bad the current situation in the pandemic is. That's a very big given. And zooming in Jensen, we are actually one of the cities with the highest amount of cases right now. And because of that, the livelihood of people in Jensen was harshly affected. And even some people in our team circle of friends. This is because a lot of people in our city rely on face-to-face operations like our fish port here, small businesses, stalls in malls, and more. But despite that, the vaccines in Jensen are very limited. You can see that in Facebook posts of the LGU. People are commenting, you keep on saying get vaccinated, but where are the vaccines actually? In our circle as well too, we had no idea where to get the vaccines or what the actual situation was. And I was one of the very few people who found it easy to get my vaccine. And the people around our circle who we know who got their vaccines easy as well were those who had connections in the LGU or like sons of daughters in the area. So the question was, what about the others who really had no idea where to get the vaccines, who had no connections, no idea whatsoever? So our team realized that the problem in terms of vaccines is not just a people problem, it's a systemic problem. And in our current structure where ease of access is only granted when you're at a certain position, right now, healthcare is more of a privilege instead of a right. So starting on the project was not from a last straw thing, it was more of a culmination of the different emotions that our team felt. We felt anger at the system for allowing these gaps to exist, sadness at how this seems to be unending, and at the same time, we also felt hope that we know that we had the community, the resources, and the capacity to be able to do something for our community. So the biggest reason why we started this project was that we realized that we had the capacity and that we can take action. And that's how our project was born. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Chloe. A couple of things that I also want to highlight that you mentioned. Thanks for sharing, the reality in your own city, which I'm sure everybody really is interested to hear about. A lot of operations on the ground is really face to face, even where you're from. And so that is something that we need to have in mind. And with accessibility to vaccines, which is a topic that you're very much working on, it's something that is so crucial to know as well. I also see a pattern here between Chloe's and Doc Lorenzo's answer. If it wasn't really sort of a last straw thing, but a culmination, as Chloe puts it, of many different fields, many different realities that we know. So that is, I'm sure, very, very interesting to hear for our audience. I'm also very interested to hear from Ren on what was this? Was there a last straw? Or was it also a culmination, just like our first two panelists?
I think that, yeah, I agree with what Chloe said. It was more of a culmination. It's a given right now that yung times natin is different. Everything is uncertain. And we know for a fact that a lot of people are struggling right now more than ever. They're struggling to keep their jobs, to get jobs even. And as I stay and study indoors, I realize that a lot of people in our community in the Philippines can't afford to just sit back and stay at home like I do. So in our community immersions in Tacloban City, our groups learned that many tricycle drivers, yung pedicab drivers, yung mga sa Depadjak, they live only on a meager day-to-day wage and had families that were considered nutritionally at risk. So they earned around 1,000 to 2,000 pesos per week, which was really not enough to sustain their needs, especially na we learned that some of them had at least 5 members in their family. If we thought na if this amount is not enough to sustain their expenses for basic necessities for food, how much more for maintenance, for taking supplements, getting checkups, or just making sure na they're okay during this pandemic, especially when right now health is the most valuable thing that we have. Hearing this from the community, knowing that a lot of them needed yung government assistance from other sectors, this is when we realized that we couldn't just stop there. There was something that we can do for them, even from our homes. We had to push forward and ultimately maximize our options in helping them attain their best health. So this is why our organization was formed. We want to address yung prevalence ng malnutrition and yung overall health and nutrition talaga in our community. So Libsog Kabataan, Libsog means health, healthy, and Kabataan, children. We know that we are in a position of privilege, and knowing the gravity of the situation, we know that we have this obligation to educate ourselves, as well as to give the community a chance to speak, to be heard. So this is to make sure that our solutions are crafted in a way na consistent talaga with what their needs are and the future that we envision our community to have. So that's a healthier community, one that prioritizes their health and their nutrition. That's all. Thank you.
Very well said, Ren. Thank you so much for sharing as well. And one thing that you did mention was there must be, you said in your words, there must be something we can do even from our own homes. And we know that that is a huge limitation that everybody is facing at the moment. And yet it was definitely a challenge, but not something that was a block that allowed you to say there's nothing you can do even from a remote basis. So thank you for having this mentality. And I know a lot of people do want to get inspired by that type of thinking as well, especially at this time. Of course, there is also chat to share with us a little bit about maybe the culmination for you, that moment where you started to really think, I'm going to do something about it. You can take the floor, chat.
Okay, thank you. I think in my experience, it started when I became a part of an idea stage startup. I was a former community partnership manager, so I do the community engagement on the ground. So we are a group of researchers in that idea stage startup, and we are trying to impart something for the community when it comes to children's vaccination kasi isa din yun talaga sa naapektuhan ng pandemic. However, during the time, since wala pa yung COVID vaccine, it's our first time COVID respond natin yon, naka-ECQ lahat, our only means of communication with our officials para makapagpaalam kami is via email. But the problem with email, hindi sila nagre-reply. So as a community engager, it makes me worried, it makes me anxious. And then I realized I told the team that when you are doing community work or doing community engagement, you do not wait for favorable conditions to happen. Kasi yung pandemic, di naman natin siya inaasahan. If you have the chance to act it now, do it now. So I think dun nagsimula yung there's a need, there's a passion that I have to do this. Kasi kung hindi natin gagawin, kailan pa kaya, di ba? Mas maganda yung nandito na tayo ngayon sa pandemic, at least meron tayong ginagawang ganito kesa nung wala pa. So, yun yung makikita natin, how much more kapag nasa normal na tayo na walang sakit, na tayo ay COVID. So, yun. Thank you
so much. And no, thank you very much for that answer, for sharing that story with us. I think another quotable quote, if I may say so, from you was, you said in your words again, kung hindi natin gagawin, kailan pa kaya? And I think that's a really good tie up to what the first panelist who shared, Dr. Renzo, already said, hanggang dito na lang ba tayo? And I think those two questions are very connected, very similar, if even, to ask ourselves at this moment. And I'm sure our audience right now as well can feel that this question is something they're probably asking themselves, or if they haven't yet, might want to ask themselves. Again, to our audience, if there's anything, a quotable quote as well that, that I love bringing up or highlighting, if there's something that you want to do so too, put it in a chat box, again, using our hashtags. All right, that was our first round of sharing. Thank you to our panelists. Now I want to move on to the next question, which I think is a very interesting question to ask all of you as well as youth leaders. We'd like to ask you, what was the gap specifically that you wanted to fill in your community? And what has been the biggest roadblock in bridging that gap so far? So what was, knowing that you wanted to do something, having that proactivity, that energy to, all right, I'm going to do it. Once you started doing your initiatives, having your projects on the ground or online, what was the gap, and then what was the roadblock that you faced? And maybe for this question, we can start off with Ren.
Okay, well, thank you for that wonderful question. In line with our group's advocacy, the problem was that what we were trying to solve, we could say, was more on the prevalence of malnutrition on children. Aside from this, we could help them in other aspects of their health and nutrition. However, I think yung problem was that there was a disconnect between what the people wanted and a solution which was both sustainable and feasible for our group. The problem of malnutrition in our community was already being addressed through mga feeding programs ng mga barangay. The community had expressed rin na these feeding programs were helpful, but at the same time, sporadic siya, short term. So, hindi agad-agad nakikita yung significant change among the children's health. Still, yung people, they had this mindset na that leans toward like feeding programs and receiving ayuda, assistance, as solutions, because of course, this was one of the overt ways that they received help. So while the feeding programs required greater effort, logistics, and consistent funding, ito yung favor nila because these were provided and handed to them directly. Nabubusog sila. Nafe-feel nila na may something at that point in time. Like, you could say it was instant gratification, parang ganon. On our end, we thought na a long-term and sustainable solution which targeted the roots of the problem, that is yung systemic poverty, the lack of enabling environments, it was also equally important. So we went from sponsoring feeding programs to providing basic medical equipment and medicines for the community. So you might be wondering, ang laki ng leap, why from feeding programs to medical supplies? This is because we found out na there was no functioning health center in the barangay. For others to prioritize their health, a more enabling and supportive environment for health-related decisions is essential. How can people seek medical attention if visiting the doctor in this pandemic is dangerous and it's difficult? How can they eat better if walang money for food? How can they receive yung most basic of health services without a health center sa paligid nila. So we believe that providing medical equipment and supplies coupled with proper dissemination of health information could bring them closer to this enabling environment. So this would be for the long term, and it would allow in the residents to make healthier and informed choices because the resources and knowledge to them was there na, it was readily available. So we wanted to do that for them. Yun lang po.
Thank you so much, Ren, for sharing. A lot of what you mentioned, to me, it really reflects how deeply and how well you needed to get to know the community that you were working with, or you were working with, essentially, knowing that what was existing is something that might have been short term or sporadic, and then knowing that that was the gap specifically that you needed to target very much helped in creating a solution with the community, as always, because we want to be person-centered. Thank you so much for this. We'd love to ask the same question and hear from chat as well. Again, what was sort of the gap that you realized you needed to fill, and were there any roadblocks in bridging that gap so far?
So siguro po sa tingin ko in my community engagement experience, I think yung pinaka-gap talaga is yung accessibility and also yung exclusivity. Kasi napapansin ko po sa city-centered na mga health centers, ang dali ng access. Pero yung mga people sa bukid na kailangan tumawid ng bundok, kailangan tumawid ng ilog, ang hirap. They have to wait for the announcement of the higher ups before actually doing something, which is not, ideal. Kasi syempre, pag health yan, hindi yan, dapat we have action agad-agad, call to action. So, this main problem, especially in our group, we trying to give innovation. We wanted to automate records kasi lahat talaga naka-manual. But the problem is, yung ating mga healthcare workers sa bukid, especially yung mga may edad na, yung mga senior citizen, mas gusto nila yung manual, gusto nila yung nagsusulat, kasi for them, it's efficient, for them, it's effective, and we have to respect that. So kami as a team, kailangan namin mag-isip ng paraan on how we can think an idea that we will meet in the middle. So yun yung talagang pinaka-challenge sa amin. Kasi dun ko napatunayan na hindi mo sila basta-basta mako-convince kasi they have their own perspective. In a community, there's a lot of people, and having a lot of people meaning different perspective, and you have to respect that. So what we did is we just try to do some emotional labor, and I realized that the people remember someone who does not explain the project itself, but also someone who listened to them, yung concerns nila, yung queries nila, kung ano ba dapat yung kailangan nila, yung isang health worker gusto nila na mas malaki yung sahod nila para mas man-motivate sila, yung iba naman gusto nila na mabigyan sila ng pansin ng ating national government, which is right now, it's very hard to achieve na yung ating mismong government may problem internally. So, ang hirap. So, yun yung pinaka-roadblock para sa amin.
Thank you so much, Salamat Cha. I think very clear. Your answer was very clear. And if I could just echo what you mentioned, you said na it was very important, and this is the gap that you said you found in your initiative, is that you needed to find an idea that meets in the middle. Kasi yun nga, you were working with people essentially coming from various perspectives, various different approaches, and of course you didn't want to just introduce something that was out of the blue, but it had to be something that could be well adapted, well integrated as well. And that's very, very clear. And I'm sure a lot of people maybe have faced this or could face this, and it's good to know that it's something that was also a challenge for you, because then we know that it could still work out, especially with your advice that the community doesn't necessarily want someone offering or explaining the solution or your idea, but just someone who listens. And I really want to, if I could repeat that, they just want someone who listens. And even us as people, isn't that just something that we want, right? So thank you so much, Cha. Maybe we could also hear from Doc Lorenzo.
Thank you very much. Contributing to the discussion, as a young servant leader, I can't sometimes avoid being, so they say, too idealistic in identifying so much gaps inconsistencies, and insufficiencies related to our field of work and advocacy, and then trying to address them all. However, narrowing them down to the essentials and most related to my passion, the biggest gap we wanted to fill was the gap in healthcare information access, delivery, and dissemination, especially amongst the youth. Where can people, especially the youth, have easy access to factual information about their health without having to pay a premium or consulting a doctor and paying for a consultation fee, for example. Um, and when the COVID-19 pandemic started, we were in the dark. Our information to help us combat the virus was very limited. As the pandemic went on and more aspects about the virus and the disease unfolded, various pieces of information became available. However, the information that was spreading was very vulnerable to distortion, becoming misinformation or disinformation, and along with local beliefs or myths, with the ease of access and spread in social media channels, and a lack of fundamental knowledge in fact checking, the concomitant infodemic happened. This happens when an excessive amount of information that is typically unreliable spreads rapidly, causes confusion, and even panic or hysteria that can endanger lives and make targeted solutions more difficult to achieve. This infodemic is in itself a very, very big roadblock and even an adversary, a continuous adversary to achieve efficient healthcare delivery, information access and dissemination, and in our health-seeking behavior and compliance of the general population. This creates further gaps as well, and it worsens the pandemic that we have in our country. In fact, for example, misinformation and disinformation are one of the main reasons why a significant number of Filipinos were very hesitant and anxious in the first parts of the COVID-19 vaccine rollout. So this, coupled with some gaps and inconsistencies in the rollout itself, led to a slow vaccination response before, if we can remember. So yeah, I hope I've answered your question.
Definitely, Dr. Lorenzo. I think it's also very valuable for our audience to see the differences in the gaps that you faced or are still currently facing. You know, earlier we were just simply talking about how can we meet in the middle with a solution and really being able to listen. And now you just brought out another very, very valuable topic, which is information that is easily spread and could be distorted is a huge gap that was faced before and maybe is still even being faced at the moment. So even this, you know, I'm sure the audience can feel it, hearing from the different approaches or perspectives also from our speakers is very valuable tonight. We have one more, of course. We have Chloe to also answer the question of what is a gap and a roadblock that you faced. You can take the floor, Chloe.
Thank you. So, as a team, our mission was to uphold that healthcare is a universal right through mitigating gaps as well on accessibility. It's actually interesting to see from here that the pain point on accessibility is so prominent but is really tackled differently by different people. So the journey from our mission to our project was humbling, challenging, and fulfilling. At the start, our initial idea was to do something that was solely related to vaccine hesitancy, like educational events. But after our research, we realized that our past thoughts were built on our prejudice that there were no existing efforts already in place for this, and that people absolutely know nothing about vaccines, which really wasn't the case. And we learned that the problem of vaccines is more than just about people's hesitancy. It's so much more amplified by access, and that the solutions targeting this are very, very limited. So here comes our project. So we did Janssen Bakuna, where we had an online vaccine database where we consolidated information on vaccines in Janssen. And in doing so, we hope to provide and improve access in vaccines. And when I think about it, the biggest roadblock that we faced was coordinating with the different bodies to implement what we needed for the project. It was hard to set that up since we didn't know who to approach, and online coordination was just harder in general. It was hard to get people to reply in the first place. And this was even amplified by problems within our team, like some members getting sick throughout that very, very small time frame that we had. And honestly, there were really points that I just personally wanted to tell everyone to not pursue the project for a while, since life just got in the way and motivation was just harder in general to light up. But honestly, through every roadblock that we had really, really good support. And every tiny achievement that we had, like finally scheduling a call with an officer, all of these really kept us motivated to continue. So, all that being said, I just learned that it's important to humble yourself and to just be genuine when it comes to creating and pushing for your initiative. So, yeah, that's for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chloe. You're right when you said in the beginning that there could be the same pain points for different people, and still various ways to answer that or to face those pain points or those challenges. It's very true. I guess it only also emphasizes that we come from the perspective that our solutions really need to be adapted to where we are and to who we're catering to, which I think is a good sign as well. And I really like, Chloe, that you shared a roadblock that is a little bit more internal as well, which was, organizing the team, keeping the motivation up, still finding that energy, that will to continue the idea, continue the initiative, even if, as you say, life gets in the way. It definitely does. But we're very happy that you did continue to work on your project, and you're still continuing to work on your project as well. Thank you very much to our panel for answering our second question. I think it's very, very interesting to hear from everybody. We have a couple more, very few more questions for our panelists. But before we get into our last one or two questions, I'd like to ask the audience, and if the audience could tell us in the comments section or in the chat box right now, is there a gap in the health system in either vaccination rollouts, accessibility to quality healthcare that you want to fill? Maybe some of you are already thinking about it. Maybe this is a question you've been asked for the first time, but do let us know in the chat box or in the comment section your thoughts about this. Is there any gap that you personally want to fill? And while we wait for those responses, I'd like to ask our panel our third question for the night. What is your advice for these people who are currently, I'm sure, commenting in our chat box? What is your advice to our community, to citizens? How does one start their own community initiative? Just like all of you did. And maybe for this question, we can actually start with Chloe.
Sure. Thank you. This is a very nice question. So, the youth are honestly so powerful. We are granted access to so much novel and diverse technologies that are now parts of our daily lives and are very second nature to us. Like we use Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or if you're artsy, maybe Canva, Photoshop, and so much more. All of these are now second nature, and we use all of these all the time. So you can just imagine the possibilities of what we can do when we use all of these for our specific purpose. And in our case, that would be our advocacies. So my advice would be, you can use technology or different digital media to create different human-centered initiatives or empower your current initiatives. Through this approach, we can create new solutions, new unique solutions, and build ideas based on innovation. So we know that right now we live in a digital era where most things can be found online. Through different technological means, you can connect with different people, you can upskill yourself in a way that you want, and so much more. So we know that the possibilities today are super endless. Like if you want to make a website, explore a podcast, maybe videos, infographics, campaigns, we can execute all of these through some clicks. And in terms of working with other people as well, it is so much easier to collaborate with people from all locations all over the Philippines. And apart from that, maybe I'd also suggest that you can join different remote initiatives like Make Sense Imagining Healthy Futures and more. There are so many opportunities online these days, and you can just search all of that in one click. And it's amazing how there are so many communities out there. And honestly, it really just starts from a simple search. So in conclusion, everything's becoming more possible and accessible, and it's really time that we make use of it. Use your own skills and capabilities and understand that you have so much more capacity to push forth your advocacy. Let's use tech and the different tools that we have to create human-centered initiatives for humanity. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, Chloe. And Chloe's advice is very direct to the point. She said, use technology and social media to create tools to join initiatives, specifically imagining healthy futures, and also collaborate with others. That's awesome. Thanks so much, Chloe. While our panels also, the rest of our panel is also answering our third question for the night, I'd like to remind the audience that if you have any questions for them, you can put them in the chat box or in the comment section of our live, and we'll definitely try to answer a few before we end this panel session. All right, back to this question of advice again, concrete advice. What would be your advice, Dr. Lorenzo, for the people who want to start their own initiatives?
Thank you for asking me this question. And this question is basically close to heart because I'm all for youth engagement and youth empowerment. In creating the world we want and the bright future we deserve, it has to start from something, somewhere, somehow. The best advice I can provide you, all of you who are viewing the live stream now, is to open your eyes, open your ears, your minds, and your heart. First is to open your eyes and ears to what really happens around you. See and listen to the voices of the community members, to their plights, to their suggestions or recommendations, and don't be afraid to really start and engage from the grassroots level. Second is to open your minds to the reality and the truth, no matter how sad it may be, but also open your minds to new perspectives, innovations, and solutions, and to the positive mindset that you can still do something about the problems you encountered. Last is to open your hearts and have empathy to who you want to serve. Starting your own community initiative and being a leader, an advocate, or a volunteer will have its ups and especially its downs. But you have to always think about the essence of your service. Start initiatives that are for everyone and are by everyone with the goal of leaving no one behind. Open your hearts and be brave. Be brave to start something meaningful. Be brave to experience mistakes or failures along the way and turn them into learnings. Be brave to turn your vision into concrete action because sometimes all you need actually is a little fearless push to get that meaningful change started para sa maganda, maliwanag, at maginhawang bukas. If any one of you and our viewers is interested in joining the organizations and networks I will provide in the comments, please feel free to send me an email and I will definitely onboard you, orient you, and guide you in your leadership journey. Thank you very much. Make Sense Philippines.
Thank you, Dr. Renzo. We will have a few moments, a few minutes afterwards when we finish the panel as well, for our panel to share about the different opportunities that they surely have in their own organizations or their own projects, just in case any of our audience members are excited, very, very excited to join them. So as Dr. Lorenzo already mentioned, we definitely encourage everybody to join them in their different ideas, their different initiatives. Now, I really like what Dr. Lorenzo just mentioned, very clear as well. His advice is open your eyes, ears, and hearts and be brave. And I think courage is really something that is a gift. And if you have it, go for it. Of course, we also want to hear some advice from Chat. So Chat, the floor is yours.
Wow, grabe, nakaka-inspire yung mga my fellow panels naman. So for me, I think siya, kasi we should fall in love with the solution. Kasi ang daming nag-arise na problem noong nag-pandemic. And a healthy community is not just about health. We must consider a lot of factors. There is livelihood, environment, and so much more. So I think yung ma-advise ko sa mga kabataan is yung ating mga ina-advocate dito, nagsimula siya sa isang raw idea na hindi natin alam na na-validate na natin siya along the way. It's a small initiative that will lead to a big impact. So yung advice ko for the youth is to exercise the power of empathy and listening para sa ating mga communities on the ground, and especially by maximizing the power of social media platforms. And to join to organization like Make Sense Philippines, who will not just welcome your raw idea, but will give you a community that will help and support your idea to be validated. And it was so nice to find those kind of organization during this time. It means that you are not just a productive individual, but a progressing citizen of this country.
Very well said, Chat. Thank you so much. And I think Chat's advice very valuable as well, combining two that we've already heard, specifically exercising the power of empathy as well as maximizing the power of social media platforms. Awesome. Thank you, Chat. Last but not the least, of course, we'd love to hear your advice as well. Ren, you can take the floor.
Oh yes, po. Thank you. I really agree with Doc Lorenzo po and Ischa kasi I really think that empathy and open-mindedness to the issues in our community is like a first step to starting an initiative. But for me personally, I would like to add to that kasi sometimes in this big and foreign world, you get stuck at the house of how to start an initiative. Let's say my heart is in the right place. I've educated myself. I want to do something, but the world is so big. There's just so much happening, and I get stuck like kung paano ako magsisimula. So in my experience with Libsog Kabataan, I think that the program of Make Sense, yung Imagining Healthy Futures po, it was a great help in kickstarting the movement. I had limited knowledge myself with starting community initiatives aside from yung mga charity programs and volunteer work that I did in school before. So the advice and the guidance from the experts who had experience in community development and organization was super helpful for us. So once you have that spark and you have that advice now from the experts, you can start planning and taking into mind your connections and the available options that you have. We have online options, we have offline options, and you could even drag your friends and family into it. For me, I dragged my friends and family from yung friends ko from high school, from elementary. I had them join yung organization so that we could start something during this pandemic. Also going back, our community was mostly offline. So we had to work with this. They didn't have much access to online resources, so we had to go there talaga mismo. And we had to start our donation drives from the people that we knew. We messaged acquaintances, friends, and family to help out. So next came yung mga online partnerships, yung mga organizations, and yung mga individuals that would have wanted to contribute to sa mga donation drives namin. It's also true na it gets discouraging at first, especially if yung circle mo ay small. But no, not to worry, as long as your actions are headed in the right way, and if it's for your target community talaga, you'll eventually see results. So in summary na lang, if you need the guidance and help in starting your own initiative, don't hesitate to ask others, especially yung mga experts. Maybe a program like IHF nga can help. Next, you can start planning and going over yung mga possible connections mo, your platforms, what's suitable for your community so that they can receive talaga fully yung help and assistance that you want to give them. And lastly, you never give up. Remember now we're doing this for others, and even if just one more person feels heard, feels supported through what we do, it's more than enough talaga for us to keep on going. Yun lang po.
Thank you, Ren, for such a positive message. I definitely agree with what you mentioned earlier that if you are looking to be guided in this, or this is a topic that you're still new to or still coming into, then definitely seeking out people who have been there, who have done that, are one of the key things to do. If the audience is interested, you can obviously reach out to the panel themselves. But also that could also highlight the value of joining programs, just like IHF, right? Where you get connected because it's part of the program flow to be connected to people who can give advice, people who can mentor. So essentially, it's really good advice from everybody. Thank you so much for those insights. I had such a wonderful time hearing from everybody. Really, we loved hearing about your journey, especially your stories, your ideas, and we wish you definitely more power as we all continue to fight for a healthier future. All right, I'm gonna go check if we have any questions from our audience. And for those audience members who still want to catch up with any of your questions or comments, if you just want to say you loved one thing or you loved hearing from one panel, feel free to do so as well. Let's see. We have one question here, which is that, a very good question for our panelists. And let's see if we have time for everybody to actually answer it. The question is, how do you rest? AKA, how can youth advocates and leaders avoid burnout and perhaps even find or keep the joy of advocacy work? Very in tune with the topic or our theme for tonight. Again, the question is, how do you personally rest? And how can youth advocates and leaders avoid burnout? Very, very in line with Giginhawa tonight. I will open the floor for any of the panelists to maybe unmute. I'll give it a few seconds, but if not, I could also just call on certain people. If anybody want to take this on specifically, it would be very nice to hear from Doc Lorenzo on this question. Of course, because you're a youth leader, you're someone who works with a lot of these people as well. How do you rest? How do you keep that joy within you? And if we have time, I'd love to hear from the other panelists as well. Let me just give the floor first to Dr. Lorenzo.
Thank you for the question. Actually, I can really relate to that question because aside from national initiatives, I'm also involved with global volunteer work. So the time zone is really impossible sometimes. Minsan nagbabaliktad na yung tulog sa gising. But ginhawa or rest, pahinga, is really, really important in our work, in our motivation as youth leaders and volunteers, because it equates to being refreshed, to being recharged and energized. And how can we do that? Actually, there are a lot of ways. If you're close to your family, personally, I talk to my family. I share. We talk about other topics aside from what we do, aside from what I do. Talk to your friends outside your network of advocacy, your network of the organization. You can also indulge in the things that you love doing. If you have hobbies, for example, if you're into photography, videography, if you're into cooking, if you're into writing stories or anything, make sure you have time for that also. In short, live a balanced and a well-varied lifestyle para walang umay, kumbaga, para walang sawa yung ginagawa natin. So again, ginhawa, pahinga, rest is really, really important in order for us to feel energized and refreshed.
Thanks, Doc. I love the advice of making time for your hobbies and keeping time for your hobbies as well. Maybe you have a couple of hobbies you want to share with us, kahit sa chat box na lang, Doc, in the live stream. You mentioned photography. Maybe that's something that you do also in your personal time. But thank you so much for the advice. Again, the question is, how do you rest? So maybe you can throw this question next to Chloe. How do you rest, Chloe?
Sure. This is a very good question. And this really brings the topic of balancing self-advocacy and your community advocacy, because that's actually a thing that's becoming more of a discussion nowadays. So personally, I really just pride myself to think that self-care is something that's definitely non-negotiable, and I can only do the other things that I want to do if I am at a certain capacity to be able to do everything else. So there are really a lot of ways to rest, but for me personally, that looks like setting healthy boundaries for myself, doing things that I really love and really enrich me. Like I literally have a list of things that I really need to do. Like for example, working out or eating well, journaling at night. So all of these are non-negotiables that are not work related, but at the same time, just really sharpen my saw in a sense and just keep me going to my day to day. And in finding joy specifically, I really just find value in ensuring that you're in love with what you're doing and just falling in love with it every single day. Because I feel like that's probably one of the biggest motivators for you to just keep going with your advocacy work, even if it can get taxing. Yeah, that's for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Chloe. You mentioned balancing self-advocacy and community advocacy, and I think that's a really good topic to also think about on a personal level. Maybe, Ren, you could also share with us, how do you rest?
I think I also like super agree with what Chloe said because it's important to set healthy boundaries talaga with yourself. Let's say for me, it's having my morning routine. Um, that's where I rest the most actually and get fill my cup before I fill anyone else's cup because you really can't pour anything out if own cup is empty. So that's where I try to do what I like the most. Journal. I have breakfast. I just walk around, I guess, and interact with my family. And even though this is not exactly like sleep na rest, I feel that there's a certain amount of comfort in that, and that's what I know na I need to get recharged for the day ahead. So going back to the other question na how I like find joy with my advocacy. Um, I feel like it's more on, for me, it's more on going back to my whys. Like, why am I doing this in the first place? Who am I doing it for? So once I always try to keep myself grounded, and even if times aren't as easy, I know that once I settle things with myself, I can then move on to others and keep on doing this for them because uh, as I said before, I think it's a really a matter of privilege that I get to do this for others. So ayun, it's just going back talaga to my whys, and especially knowing that organizational work that I do is making me happy, that I enjoy it, and there are people who benefit from it. You know.
Thank you so much, Ren. You mentioned as well, how what you do in mornings for self-care with having breakfast, just walking around, talking to your family, journaling, all these different things to recharge. And it seems to me that your mornings are very sacred to you, and you actually make time to proactively keep it sacred, which I'm very happy for you that you're able to do this. And I hope a lot of the people in the audience are able to do the same as well. Again, it's very important in the question of keeping joy and making joy as well. We have, of course, Chat as well to share with us. How do you rest, Chat?
Siguro po as part din ng self-love, kapag nagkakaroon ako ng complete na 6 to 8 hours na tulog, and hindi ko chine-check yung aking mga emails and then yung mga Facebook messengers ko. So I think yun yung dun talaga ako nakaka-feel ng pahinga na parang nakaka-recharge ako, and parang doon nag-open yung mga bagong ideas na naiisip ko for the community. So yun lang, yung tulog lang talaga. And also, ang advice ko lang din sa ating mga leaders, kasi most of the time, leaders are the one who are leading. And very important din na meron silang napapagkatiwalaan sa kanilang organization para maibigay nila yung trabaho as a sign of collaboration or self-collaborative na teamwork para maiwasan talaga yung burnout sa bawat isa.
Thank you, Cha. I love that you mentioned that getting enough sleep is self-love. And I think a lot of people need to hear this more. Again, to our audience members, getting enough sleep is part of self-love. Thank you for the concrete advice from all of our panelists. I had such a good time hearing from everybody and hearing your answers to that specific question as well. Again, it ties back to our theme, the main reason we're here tonight. We actually have a couple more questions in the chat box, but we don't have enough time. I'll just read one more maybe, but then we don't have time for the panel to actually answer them here. Instead, still tune in, still stay, because the panel will be answering the additional questions in our chat box, like the question, what is the level of pressure in the work that you do as youth leaders or community leaders? And how do you deal with that? How do you deal with the pressure that you're receiving or that you're maybe feeling? So again, keep tuning in because our panelists are going to be answering additional questions in the chat box in the comment section. But for now, we're going to give a couple more minutes just for our panelists to share with us how we can be involved with the different initiatives that they're working on or that they're leading. If we could have just a panelist tell us what could be just plug in those initiatives that you're working on, starting with chat this time. How can we connect with you, chat?
Currently, in our organization, our activities are on hold because most of our capacity building activities will be held on outside. So I wish that you just follow our page, You Lead Initiative Incorporated, like our page, and we also conduct webinars there. So you attend, and that's it. You also want to be a member, you can also do that. Just contact me.
There we go. Thank you, chat. How about you, Ren? How do we get in touch with you?
So our organization, Libsog Kabataan, is actually on Facebook, or it's Libsog Kabataan lang po. And we also have email, libsogkabataan@gmail.com, if you're interested in like partnerships or anything. But currently, right now, we're in the middle of finishing yung donation drive namin, which was one of our short-term goals for IHF. So what we did was we started a donation drive, and then right now we're actually receiving na we have received na yung mga medical equipment and supplies that we have ordered. So ayun, we're about to conduct na yung turnover sa barangay namin. It's just since it's nearby lang na barangay, we'll be going there talaga. And of course, observing safety protocols. So yun lang po. If interested kayo, you may check it out. Thank you.
There you go. Libsog Kabataan is on Facebook. You can just search it there and give them a like, give them a follow. How about you, Chloe? How do we follow or how do we get involved with Paayota?
So our project is, for context, our project is a website, right? Right now, we're working towards making it more replicable for different people. So we don't have a Facebook page yet, but if you'd like to get in touch, just feel free to send me a message or drop me an email, since right now we're really trying to make guides, I guess, and like ways for other people to replicate the project in their own areas as well. So yeah, just get in touch with me. Thank you.
Awesome. And I think, Chloe, you can also leave your email in the comment section or in the chat box so people know how to get in touch with you. I'm sure they're very, very excited. Last but not the least, Doc Lorenzo, how do we get involved with your initiative?
Hello, thank you so much for the opportunity. I sent some descriptions and links in the comment in the live stream. Basically, I'm part of the UNDP Movers program. We are a community of trainers and facilitators. If you want to attend trainings and have the opportunity to train your networks and organizations and communities as well, please feel free to join us. I'm also part of More Viral Than the Virus Philippines. If you're an interested youth who want to make change in your communities, also please feel free to refer to that link. I'm also part of the ECAP Climate Hackathon organizing team. If you're into climate action, climate advocacy, and innovation, and you want to pitch in your own solutions for climate change and climate action, you can join the hackathon either as an individual or as a team. I've also sent there the details. Lastly, I'm part of the Ocean's Voice working group from Yongo. We're going to have our capacity building training series starting this September until October. The first session is on goal setting and smart objectives, starting tonight at 9 p.m. I'll also leave the link so that you can register and we can have you there. So if you're interested to join in any of the initiatives and organizations I've mentioned, I'll also leave my email, but it's sablay.red@gmail.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Lorenzo. And as already mentioned, all of the links are already there in the comment section. So I'm sure you're all seeing it right now. Feel free to reach out to any of our panelists or all of our panelists. That was an incredible discussion. I'm sure you all agree. Can we send our panel some hearts in the chat box, please? Comment, thank yous, send some emojis, heart reacts, please. And don't forget to share any of your favorite quotes, favorite stories, or your own thoughts and ideas with us, again, in any platform, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, wherever it is. And again, the hashtags for this event are #Giginhawa and #Imagining Healthy Futures. Now that you've heard from our panel about the initiatives that they've done, that they're currently working on, it's time for one last reminder as to why these kinds of initiatives and the many others like them, and even the ones that are still in progress, are so crucial in keeping everyone afloat in times like these. Allow me to welcome someone who is the founder and president of the Society of Sustainability Practitioners, the One Kainta Food Program, Sustaina Rumble, and Modular Education X. Through her organizations, she has provided food, water, electricity, disaster relief, and supplementary education to over 500,000 people across 7 cities in the Philippines. She has been selected as a global changemaker, UPG Sustainability Leader, Climate Reality Leader, and Dalai Lama Fellow. It's our pleasure to give the floor to another passionate driver of change, the Philippines' own Princess Diana awardee, Miss Shawntel Nieto. Welcome, Shawntel, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Pepper. It's always so great to be here. Okay, let me just give it a few. Thank you very much for that clip and video. I understand that I am using a different device for my video, so please bear with me. I think I could just spotlight perhaps my video so that it doesn't mess my audio up. But in any case, my name is Shawntel Nieto, and thank you for having me this evening. Powerless. To see cases rising every day, not knowing what else is there we can do. Powerless, not knowing what will happen next or when things will get back to normal. Powerless. I wouldn't even want to talk about the other kind of powerlessness that so many have faced during this pandemic. Back when things were normal, it was easy for us to feel as if we could conquer the world. We could do anything we want. We could meet people, organize, create things, travel. Today, things are a bit more different. The pandemic has introduced us to powerlessness like we've never known before. I still remember the first time I caught sight of powerlessness so many years ago. I was a teenager and I was given the opportunity to visit marginalized communities in our floodways. It was there when I was meeting people like Aling Dolor, Ate Christie, Mang Nestor, who welcomed me and my friends into their homes as if we were always part of their communities. Back then, I was working on an electrification project and I would go on and on and on about energy and power and electricity. And one thing struck me though, because as I was going on and on about it, I started to enter Aling Dolor's house and I noticed that it didn't have any appliances. And when I looked up the ceiling, there was no light bulb installed. I asked why, and she said that it was because they didn't have power. They didn't have energy or electricity for the past months now. There I was going on and on about electricity and power and how it can change things. And I was having all of these brilliant ideas. And the person right next to me, the person I was with the entire time, didn't even have any. And I didn't even know. It was then when what were mere statistics on a sheet of paper became actual troubles affecting people that I really cared about. It was then that poverty, marginalization, and powerlessness became very real and personal for me. It became real because suddenly these were actual people that I knew, befriended, and cared about that were facing and living in it every day. And I knew that that wasn't right. Ever since I was a child, I've always believed that we all deserved the ability and the chance to create the life we wanted to live or that we want to have. I'm not saying everyone should have a Prada bag or a Louis Vuitton, but I'm saying that everyone should have the chance to create the life they want to create. Being with marginalized communities since 2015 showed me that poverty erases this chance and that people are constantly deprived and robbed of the power, the choices, and the rights they've always deserved to have. This is why since 2015, I've been working on the ground, striving to provide marginalized communities and sectors with their basic needs, such as energy, water, education, and recently through our One Kainta food program, food and relief. This is why understanding that poverty, marginalization, and powerlessness need systemic solutions in order to truly be eradicated, I got into the field of sustainability. And from there, currently lead the Society of Sustainability Practitioners, or SSP, and host Sustainable podcasts in the hope that we can elevate and professionalize the fields and practice of sustainability and sustainable development here in the Philippines. This is why I keep on working, because no one deserves to be deprived of the chance to create the life they want. No one deserves to feel and to be powerless. We've felt how it is to be powerless for 1.5 years. Many people were born into it. Many people live that reality every day of their lives, and that's not right. And it's high time we change things. And it's high time we gave them the chance they've always deserved to have. And that's why I keep working. But I'll stop here for a bit because you've heard the introduction. Pepper has read that very generous bio of me. You've seen the video. And the last thing that I want you to come out of this talk with is the idea that, oh, she's really great. She does a lot of things. She's done a lot of things. She's pretty amazing. I don't want a pat in the back or a congratulations. I want you to feel as if you could do that too. In fact, that you could do more. I want you to realize that I'm also just another normal person. Trying, working, failing, making mistakes, making a lot of things more often that I would care to admit, but somehow still being able to do certain things and leave my own form of positive impact in the world. Because I act and because I believe that I do have the power to act. And honestly, if I can do it, anyone else in this room, anyone else watching from their screens can too. I want you to realize that change is in my hands and it's in yours. Sometimes we think that we have to be superheroes, celebrities, or amongst all those multi-awarded to be capable. But in and by ourselves, we already are. As humans, there's always something we can do. We can dance, cook, bake, sing, write, play sports. There's always something. In fact, I'd even go to say that there's always something we can do because we can move. We can move, we can talk, we can read, we can show up, we can be present. And because there's always at least one thing we can do, if we put all of these together, there's always something we can do about whatever issue or challenge you want to face and address. We can always do something. When my family and I started the One Kainta food program last March of 2020, we really just wanted to find ways to support our communities in whatever way we can. 1.5 years later, we've distributed about 1.2 million food hampers to about 400,000 people across 10 cities and 7 hospitals. I don't even know how we did it, honestly. And yet we did. We did. Because what? Because we could talk. So we called people. We could move. So we distributed goods. We could use computers. So we organized data and created reports. We didn't need superpowers or laser vision or super strength or lightning fast speed. We just needed to understand that we had something we wanted to do and that we had the capability somehow to make something out of it, to do something about it. And somehow that was enough. Because it is, it always is. We always have the power to create change. And if we could do it, anyone could too. It doesn't even have to be about food. It can be about anything, as the panelists today have shown us. What matters is that something has to be done, and we can be the ones to do it too. And if there's one thing I would hope you come out of this panel presentation with tonight, it's a feeling of power, not powerlessness, but power. Oftentimes we think we need to be at the top with power in order to truly impact the world, but we cannot be any further from the truth. Because the world has almost always ever only been changed by bottom-up initiatives. It's been bottom-up initiatives that have changed the world for decades, and it will continue to be bottom-up initiatives that will continue to change the world for the better. It's been those unplugged from the obvious seats of power that dared to challenge what's present. It's them who have dared to reimagine what's possible and redefine what was then unthinkable and beyond the status quo, but we now considered the norm. Just a few decades ago, women weren't allowed to vote. People of color couldn't sit in the same row as the whites. And God forbid someone marry below or above their socioeconomic status, or that people of the same sex even get married at all. And although we still have a lot of work to do, much work has already been done. And it's because of those unplugged from power. It's because of those small, infinitesimal, grassroots initiatives that have dared to challenge what's present and that have succeeded time and time again in doing so. It's because we all carry the power within us. And we all continue to do so. Yes, amidst a global pandemic. We've seen it today. I've been hearing the stories of the panelists and the way they've utilized what they had in order to create impact, in order to provide for the needs that were present in their communities. Big or small, we have the power to create change. And if you still don't believe me, I'd like to end on one simple note, all right? Think of all of your thoughts, actions, and deeds as pebbles. No matter how small or big your pebble is, no matter how hard or softly you throw it into the water, it will create ripples. Every decision we have has an effect far beyond what's immediately seen. And that carries power, so much power if you really think about it. Everything we do has a ripple effect, and that has so much power. Use it. Believe that you do have the capability to create the change that you want and go for it. Because by doing good, we're not only changing ourselves, our environments, but we're also enabling others to cultivate the courage and their ability to do so too, even and especially when it's most difficult. By living our truths and using our pebbles, we set the standard and we command others to do the same. I once thought that if we became what God meant us to be, we could set the whole world on fire. Lately, I found that no one can fully. But if we keep going, if we keep trying, and if we keep using our pebbles, more will come and join. And together, maybe we can. There's power in us, and there's power in all of us together. The world can be harsh, and the challenges that come with it can be daunting. We've all felt powerless, absolutely powerless sometime during this pandemic. Maybe you're feeling it now. But we can still hope that things will be better. We can still hope that better things can come, despite seeing what can be considered the worst that already has, because we still have the power to go out there and choose to make it better. So long as we can act, we can hope. So long as we do act, there is hope. Andy said that we have to be the change we want to see in the world. I'd like to add that so long as we keep doing that, we can change the entire world. Generations before us have done it. We can and we will do it too. Because it's what's needed, and it's because I know it's what you guys want to do as well. Thank you very much. And thank you, Make Sense, for this opportunity. Have a good night, guys.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Shawntel. Really, that was really so inspiring. I'm sure many of our audience members resonate a lot when you said that we still have a lot of work to do, but also so much has been done. And I believe that all that has been done was done by people like you, Shawntel, people like our panelists, but also people like all of you in the audience joining us, tuned in right now. Again, as Shawntel puts it, use that power. All right. I hope we now all feel refreshed and energized. I hope that those stories have been a much needed breath of fresh air for everybody. And if you're looking for ways to go forward and turn that inspiration into impact, you can join our Health for All Facebook group to learn more about the different ways that you can start making a change. And that link is going to be put in the chat box or in the comment section, so do check it out. But for teams of youth leaders, you can actually join the second batch of Imagining Healthy Futures. Our applications are open until the 17th of this month. So do check it out, join the Facebook group, and we look forward to seeing you there. But at the same time, for organizations who are also looking for meaningful collaboration in this topic, the Health for All Coalition is always open to inviting new voices to the table. So 2 different opportunities, one for youth leaders who are interested in being part of the second batch, and those who are also from organizations who might be interested in collaborating with us in the coalition as well. Again, you can join the Health for All Facebook group linked on the screen right now, but also in the comment section or in the chat box for more details. Now, as we finally reach the end of tonight's program, I'd like to invite our community manager, Danny, back to wrap the event up. The floor is yours, Danny.
Thank you so much, Pepper. And first of all, I'd like to thank our keynote speaker, Shawntel, and our panelists, Dr. Lorenzo, Ren, Charlotte, and Chloe, for sharing with us their incredible stories of the power of community, even in the face of adversity. You make my job of closing the program so much easier, as there's not much else for me to say following everything you've said. I wish you all more power as you continue to strive for healthier futures in your communities. I'd also like to thank, of course, our FSL interpreters, Miss Ember and Miss Amy, for helping us make tonight's event more accessible to any viewer. And of course, the team behind tonight's program, I'd like to thank them as well. I think I shouldn't name names because that would just be me reading out and thanking the entirety of the Make Sense Philippines team. But I'd also like to send an extra special thank you to our communications team, our tech team for tonight, and of course, our host. And most importantly, thank all of you for taking your time for yourself and joining us tonight, especially on a Saturday evening. I hope that you get to spend the rest of the night doing something for yourself, taking care of yourself, and really refreshing. So earlier I mentioned that Giginhawa is a promise, an ever-present mantra that we will all get to breathe again. And I truly do hope that through our speakers tonight, you're refreshed and able to hold out hope again. The world we're heading back into after this event is likely no different than the one we started with this evening. Besides, we've only been here for a little more than an hour and a half, which is exactly why I want us to think of Giginhawa imagining healthier futures in another way. Oh, yes, there's been one last secret meaning to tonight's event title that I've been holding back. Now that we've heard inspiring stories and bright solutions in the midst of dark times, we've affirmed that Giginhawa really is a promise that we can all still hold on to. Because of that, it's time to turn Giginhawa into the challenge. Remember the latter half of tonight's title, Imagining Healthier Futures. It's our turn now to do exactly that. Think of a problem around us and envision how we can help build tomorrow without it. Through this, we can keep the cycle going. We can uplift and empower other people to have even the slightest hope that things will get better. We don't have to have the answers right now. In fact, perhaps the best thing we can do is turn to the ones we want to help and just listen for a moment. Let them know that there's someone in their corner ready to hear them out. You can also surround yourselves with like minded people through the Health for All Coalition and Imagining Healthy Futures. And then maybe we can help others hope again and believe in the promise of Ginhawa once more. So don't be afraid to imagine a healthier future, especially in times like these. Tayo ay giginhawa rin. Again, thank you so much, everyone, and have a good evening.
And that's a wrap on Giginhawa Imagining Healthier Futures. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight, and we really hope to see you building a healthier future with us very soon. Have a great Saturday.
Thank you. Bye-bye.